Hello there, Stevie Taylor here. Welcome to episode 43 of the Gig Life podcast. My guest today is Leon Gaer. Now let me read you the bio he sent me. Leon Gaer is an overweight, ageing bass player from Los Angeles who was depressed about the daily hair loss he experiences. He hates camping and his idea of roughing it is Netflix standard definition. His friends think he is considering becoming an astronaut because each day he spends many hours sitting around the house taking up space. His team of psychotherapists recommend that he get involved in a project of some kind. This is the reason Leon has become involved with Stevie Taylor and the Gig Life podcast. Credits: Woolworths food stores, $30. Luna Park, 2 coupons worth $10. And a Telstra calling card, $8.55 remaining credit. What a crack up. Now here's the real deal bio. Leon Gaer, bass player, composer, arranger and producer, originally from Los Angeles, now living in Sydney. Best known as the bass player on Gino Vannelli's Brother to Brother album. And since then has gone on to play bass on over 1,000 recording sessions in Los Angeles, New York, Nashville and Sydney, including Gino Vannelli, Barry Manilow, Jose Feliciano, Barry White, Don Ellis, Boy Meets Girl, Hanna Barbera Cartoons, Home and Away, the Chad Wackerman Group, Amy Dickson, Tommy Emmanuel, and many, many more. So I'm not going to say any more. Sit back and enjoy this chat that I had with Leon Gaer. Ladies and gentlemen, Leon Gaer. Cheers. All right, I think we're rolling. Leon Gaer.
Hello.
Welcome to the Gig Life podcast.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me in your beautiful house and in your fantastic studio. You've got some pretty amazing instruments.
Oh, thanks.
Around here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you were telling me before you played a club gig today?
Yes.
Yep. Tell us a bit about that.
Oh, it's just a cabaret, backing 2 cabaret acts. Today was in Malabar, RSL.
Yep.
Yes, and Joe Macri's the band leader, and Bill Cazellis was the drummer. Mm-hmm. Just a trio today.
Right, cool. And how do those things sort of go down? How do they come about?
I'm not sure. I get my call from Joe, who's the band leader, and he would get his call from, I suppose, the agents or whoever's in charge of putting those shows together.
Yeah.
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 And then Joe's the band leader, so he chooses who he wants to play in the band.
How long have you been working with him?
With Joe, many years now, but 5, 6, 7 years maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cool.
I'm not his only bass player. He hires lots of bass players. But yeah.
Right. And how many gigs a week do you get from him?
Oh, it's not so much per week. They come and go when and work with him as with everyone else comes in unpredictable waves these days.
You were just saying.
Yeah. You never know when it's going to get busy or get quiet. But.
Yeah, but I'm sure you prepare yourself for that though.
Yes.
And you were saying before, May is usually a bit of a slow time.
Yeah, it's always been that way ever since I've been in the business. You know, you just. My dad was a musician, so I learned young to put money away and not just go through it all as it comes in good times. Prepare for the slow times. Is
that a time you sort of head away on holiday or something like that, or?
Oh yeah, no. I just if it gets quiet, I've always got something to do. There's always instruments that I've always wanted to start working on or try different string setup so there's always something to do. I never find myself with nothing to do. Right.
Do you set all your own basses up?
No, I do the minor stuff. Yes, I do the minor stuff. But then I have Piers Crocker does most all my setups here in Sydney.
Right. And how many guitars do you own right now?
I don't know. maybe 150, something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But they're not all professional. A lot of them are just collector's items and strange. I collect strange, well, not strange, but I collect stringed instruments from all over the world as a hobby.
Right. Oh,
and I don't play these professionally. I hire guitar players to play them, but I love the South American reentrant tuning, which is used on like ukuleles, banjos, anything that, like a guitar goes E, A, D, G, B, E, up, 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 up all the time. And same with the 4 or 5 string or 6 string bass.
Yep.
But any instrument that has a reentrant tuning, one or more of the strings dips down and then comes back up. So like a ukulele, ding, boom,
gotcha.
Do. So it starts high, then it goes down, then it goes up. A Venezuelan cuatro is boom, 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 boom. The high string is dropped down an octave.
Right.
And the effect is when you're strumming very fast, you don't get on a guitar, if you strum slowly, say an open E chord down then up, you hear the arpeggio of the notes rolling up and then down. But any instrument with reentrant tuning like jaranas and vihuelas, it just sounds like bang, 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 bang. You don't know where the up or the downstroke is. So it's quite a different cluster of when you're playing chords. Right. It's beautiful, quite a beautiful sound.
Fantastic. And what's your, you don't have to say if you don't want to, but what's your prized guitar?
Oh, I don't have one. No,
you don't have one. Really?
Yeah. You mean in my basses that I play, or
okay? Let's go
with basses. Yeah, I've got one. I've got several Rick Maruzzi basses. Those are my favorite go-to bass because it just does everything.
Yep.
And I've got one in particular, but it does change. I've got sometime for a year or two it's this one, then the next year it's that one, and just. But they're all great. All of Rick's basses are spectacular.
Right, yeah, because from pictures and videos and stuff I've seen, it's almost a custom-looking kind of bass that you play. But do you also play the old standard jazz or P basses?
Yes, yeah. I've got a 1960 precision bass that I've had since 1972.
Wow.
And a Rickenbacker hollow body bass, and Hagstrom, a couple of quirky... they're kind of one-trick ponies. They only have one particular, not the precision, that's quite versatile, but the Hagstrom, the Rickenbacker, I have a bass dobro. They have a unique sound, and it just sounds like that, but you can't change it. I wouldn't play it all night on one job because it can't be easily used in different genres of music.
Gotcha. Do you have one bass that basically covers everything?
The Maruzzis do.
Right. Yeah.
They really do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
They're just... It's quite a simple thing. It's wonderful wood made by a craftsman and using Bartolini pickups.
Right.
And it's quite a chameleon.
Yep. Yeah. And do you get them custom made for yourself, or you buy them?
Oh, I bought them from Rick. He made all of them that I bought.
Custom order type?
Only one that I designed sort of with him, that I had a hand in saying I'd like this here and that there. But the rest, he would just make them, and I'd say, that's beautiful, I'll take it.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's cool. All right, man. Well, let's roll back to the beginning. You're from Los Angeles?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. You were saying that you're born into a musical family?
Yes, yes. I was born in Hollywood. My mother was a professional dancer, as my grandmother was too, and my father was a professional drummer. And I was born there and raised there, and started playing music at a young age. My dad started teaching me snare drum when I was about 5.
Rudimentary type?
Just rudimentary, and how to hold sticks and basic things about reading quarter notes and eighth notes.
Yep.
And then I played a little bit of piano, then played a little bit of guitar, but really wasn't interested in anything. My mother was trying to make me a dancer, which I was terrible at and not interested at all. Then when I was 14, a friend in the neighborhood had a garage band, and I'd never heard a real band play live. I'd heard the radio, but never heard a band, and I just popped over to listen to these guys play. Something happened there. I heard a bass for the first time live through a bass amp, and that rich, deep sound just thrilled me. And then I knew that's what I want to do. I want to play the bass, and it just stuck from then on. That's all I wanted to do.
Had you played a guitar at any stage?
Yes, I owned a guitar, and I had guitar lessons, but I wasn't very good at following through or practicing. I wasn't interested. But once I latched onto the bass, then I never had to be asked to practice, or I just went for it.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you remember your first bass?
Yeah, it was a Guild Starfire.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still have it?
No, I wish I did. It was a beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the many that I think lots of musicians have probably let things go for some reason that you think, oh, I'll never use this again. Then a decade or 2 or 3 later, you think, oh, I wish I had that now.
Yeah. So what were the steps to becoming a bass player? Did you go straight home from that jam and say to mum and dad, this is what I want to do?
Well, yeah,
How can we do it?
I'm an only child, and several months before that, I had said to them, I want to be a veterinary. I'd love to be a vet because I loved animals, still do. And they looked disappointed and kind of said, oh, okay, well, we'll do the best we can to help you through with that, and we'll support you in any way we can. And then, but I mean, I was only 14. I wasn't going to college or anything, so it just was going to be my interest, and I said that's what I wanted to do. Then when I came home and said, oh, I've heard this bass, I want to play the bass. That's what I really want to do, is play bass. And they both were relieved and said, oh, great, we can help you with that. We know who to get you lessons, where to get good lessons. And they sent me to Morty Korb, which was a Los Angeles bass player, fantastic studio musician. Mm-hmm. And I took lessons from Morty from when I was 14 up until about 18.
Right. So why did you stop the lessons?
Oh, I just started working.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
All right.
By 18, I was starting to go out and do gigs and stuff.
Right. Do you remember your first band?
Yeah, I had little bands when I was 15, and, just local kid bands we had. We weren't probably great. I don't think I have any recordings
just
or
garage
anything.
Band stuff. Yeah, that's cool. So when was your... at 18, you started working with the American...
Youth Symphony. Yes, playing double bass.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Mele Mehta was the conductor, who's Zubin Mehta's father.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were getting the bass lessons, did it start as an electric bass lesson, or were you
it was both.
Oh, it was both, okay.
Morty was a doubler. He played electric and upright.
Yep.
And so I studied both at the same time, electric and upright bass with him.
Okay. Did you find the transition from one to the other?
Yeah, it's quite different, actually. But
right.
When you're studying both, it's there's a lot of similarities as far as the pitch and the tuning, but the technique is different and totally different set of muscles required.
Right. So you played in a Latin band as well?
Yeah. I was playing in L.A. There's a lot of Latin community, and so I was playing with some Latin bands, playing weddings and parties and things. We played a lot of pop music of the day, plus Latin tunes in our area. Yeah.
Were you doing the symphony at the same time? Or was this...
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're professional at 18?
Yes.
Right. So did you ever have any other job?
No.
Really?
No.
You've never had another?
No. Nope.
Even to this day?
To this day.
Congratulations.
Never. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And who were your inspirations? Your musical inspirations, bass inspirations?
Bass inspirations would be Eberhard Weber, of course, Paul McCartney, Abe Laborio, Stanley Clarke, and many, I guess, you'd say unknown bass players, but just anytime we hear a great bass track, and they're everywhere. It's just not everyone's been lucky as they have to play on a tremendous, have a big volume of work. But there's lesser guys that just don't work as much or weren't recorded as much, but are here as well as in L.A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you listening to all types of music at this stage? Or,
yeah,
right.
I was into everything.
So it wasn't one thing?
No, I loved the variety.
Yeah,
and also knew that's what I wanted to be, was a freelance musician. I never wanted to be in a band or be a soloist.
You knew that early on.
Yeah. I loved being a part of the engine room, and not in the front limelight, but just being part of a team that's backing either an instrumentalist or a vocalist.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was the first big break? Was Brother to Brother the first?
Yeah.
Right, so how did that come about? Where were you?
I was playing in a little jazz club called the Baked Potato in Los Angeles with Don Randy and his band. And I was also playing with Don Ellis, who was a jazz trumpet player and music visionary, known for his odd time compositions with a big band. Mm-hmm. And I was always interested in gear for the bass, but unique stuff, and, you know, trying to find and explore and find different things. So I met Bob Easton, who used to own 360 Systems, and he introduced me to Wayne Yentis, who was a synth builder and designer. He was very good friends with Tom Oberheim, and was instrumental in the development of the keytar.
Yeah.
And so Wayne, after many meetings, we built together. Well, he built it. I just told him what I wanted, and he actually did all the wiring. 2 Oberheim expander modules with Bob Easton's pitch to voltage converter for bass. This is all pre-MIDI. So the special pickup that converts the pitch to a voltage, then sends that out several milliseconds, quite a few milliseconds later. It's late.
Right.
But it sends it off to wherever you send it. And in my case, I sent it off to 2 Oberheim expander modules, and then a huge giant pedal board that had 6 volume pedals and 12 on-off switches. And with the feet, I could control LFO, pitch bend, filter frequency. I could hold a note, you know, hit a low C or something and sustain it like you would on a grand piano or something. Hold that note and then continue to play the bass, or open the filter up as I'm playing. So it was more than just an effect that followed the bass, like a chorus or a distortion pedal. It really had a voice on its own, and I played that a lot and really got going with it. It was the only one of its kind that was built by Wayne.
Right.
And I was enjoying playing that, and I was using it with Don Ellis. And I used it with Don Randy, and I was playing at the Baked Potato. It was a rainy Wednesday night. Hardly anybody was there.
Yep.
And I thought, do I drag this big monster system in?
Yeah, okay, well, just stop there. So the lug for that.
Yeah.
So what are we talking?
Well, it's a big rack. It was a big rack. It was about, probably 10 or 12 spaces tall.
Right.
The pedal board would be, I don't know in feet, maybe 4 feet wide, so I don't know what that is in meters. And there's a picture of it on my Facebook page.
Okay.
There's a photo of that system. In fact, that system was taken by Wayne Yentis when I was recording at Davlinstown. We were doing Brother to Brother. He came and took photos of it.
Right.
So I had that big setup, and it had to be plugged in and turned on 10 minutes early because you have to wait for the oscillators to warm up so they don't drift. Yeah. And so it's a big thing to set up.
Yeah.
And I thought, do I drag this thing in now in this rain and play tonight on this Wednesday night? Hardly anyone's going to be in here. And I almost didn't. I almost thought, I'll just play the bass, you know. But that little voice said, no, this is what you do. Come on, drag it in. So I did. I dragged it in and set it up. And I had no idea, but Ross Vannelli, Gino Vannelli's younger brother, had just moved into an apartment building nearby, didn't have a phone. So he went to a neighbor and said, can I use your phone? My phone's not hooked up yet. I need to just make a phone call. And the neighbor said, sure. And they got to talking. And the neighbor was a friend of mine, a bass player. And Ross started talking to him. He said, yeah, I'm Gino's little brother, and we're doing a new album. And Gino's thinking of hiring a bass player, but he's always used synth bass. Joey, the other brother, always played synth bass.
Right.
Thinking of using, you know. And so my friend said, well, Leon's playing at the Baked Potato. Have you heard him play this new system where it's an electric bass driving synthesizers? He said, no. I said, well, let's go hear it. So they came down and heard a couple of songs. I didn't even know they popped in.
Right.
They came in during one of the sets, heard a few numbers, and left. And the next day I got a call from Gino saying, my little brother heard you play last night at this club with this system. I'm really interested. Can you come over and show it to me? And so yeah. So I jumped in the car and drove over and played it for him, and eventually wound up doing the album.
Wow.
That's how that came about, which was a lesson for me to never treat any job lightly, to think, that nobody's listening. There's nobody important out there. I'll just take the little amp. I'll just, make the lug easy. It was a lesson to me to say, always put your best foot forward.
Mm. And do you remember those sessions well?
Yeah.
So how long did it take to record that album?
We rehearsed for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then we recorded for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And did all the tracking in the daytime at Davlin Sound. And Toto was recording at nighttime. Right. Back then, studios were just going literally 24 hours a day. And so we had a 12-hour block, and they had a 12-hour block. So they'd come in the middle of the night when we were gone and do some tracks. And there was 3 drum kits there. Right. Jeff Piccolo had his drum kit there. Mark Cranny, our drummer, had his kit there. Mm-hmm. And Gino had his kit there. Because
Gino's drummer.
He's a terrific drummer.
Oh, right.
And so they were, with all 3 of them, they were borrowing and trying each other's snares and swapping cymbals and things.
Did you get to hang with the Toto guys?
No.
Yeah. They had their own little universe type thing.
Well, they were there when we were not, and we were there when they were not. Yeah.
Okay.
We never overlapped.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. And was there an expectation that the album would do as well as it did?
Well, you always hope. You never. You never know. This was Gino's. I think it was his 5th album with A&M.
Right.
And he had all of his. I don't know if you're familiar with his previous albums. They're all spectacular. He's an incredible.
Yeah, I don't really know it till after. See, I heard Nightwalker first.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. That came after Brother to Brother. That's also brilliant. Yeah. Well, everything Gino does is fantastic. Yes, it is. But the ones before Brother to Brother, there was all synth bass. Joe, his brother Joe, playing synth. And Joe is a fantastic synth bass player because he thinks like a bass player. He doesn't overdo it. You know, I mean, it's tempting on a keyboard to just go wild and play bass lines that don't work on a fretboard, that work on a keyboard. But Joe had terrific taste, and so they had these great albums, but they weren't very big commercial successes as far as getting on the charts, but they were successes musically and artistically.
Yep.
And this record, it hit, and the big hit was "I Just Want to Stop," the ballad, and which was written by Ross, the younger brother, and Gino, but Ross had a hand in that one, and that went to #1, I believe, in the States, and that launched my exposure. You know, I was the same bass player, but all of a sudden, I was popular.
Right.
Because, I was exposed.
What was that like?
Oh, it's fun. Huge fun.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you were getting just calls all the time now?
Oh, yeah, it started. That's when it started. It didn't happen overnight, but that's when, yes, good calls started coming in, and I started doing TV calls for Hanna Barbera Cartoons. I was doing
which ones?
All of them. Every Tuesday morning.
Really?
We would do a 3-hour call with a 40-piece orchestra at Evergreen, Artie Butler's studio in Los Angeles. And we would record for Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, just all the Hanna Barbera, all the cues for that week of their cartoons.
Wow.
And it's a big orchestra and loads of fun to do that.
Yeah. It's all charted, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
So before the Brother to Brother thing, were you in the studios much?
I was doing demos. There were a lot of people were doing song demos back then.
I understand. Yeah.
Everyone that was
a whole thing too.
There was tons of that because everyone that was a composer trying to pitch their tunes needed to go into a studio, get a band, cut the song, and then they could shop it to their artists. And so there was that kind of workaround.
Yep.
But no, I hadn't done any major artists
commercial
at that point.
Type stuff.
Yeah, not till Brother to Brother hit. Then I was exposed and worked for Barry Manilow, Barry White, and got more bigger calls because the exposure was there.
Yeah. Did Barry Manilow call you himself?
Well, that was another funny one. I was playing with a jazz musician and studio musician, Tom Rotella, who's a fantastic jazz guitarist, and he had a band, and I was playing bass in the band, and our drummer was Art Rodriguez, and it was a great fun jazz group that we played at Dante's and the Baked Potato, and just for fun, we played Tom's music. We were employed to play one night at a college campus on a Friday night, and which you can imagine is just a big excuse to get trashed, for the students. And so we went and played there that night, and nobody was listening, of course, because they're just there to get hammered and blow off some steam.
Yep.
But again, the same thing. I wasn't playing synth bass with Tom, but I was playing just a regular electric bass, and I almost took in my small rig, little studio, tiny little box, because I thought, who's going to hear this anyway? It doesn't. But no, drag the good stuff in, and I did. And we just did our set, didn't think a thing of it. And Victor Vanacore, who was Barry Manilow's musical director, happened to be there visiting his little brother, who was going to college there. He just came in that night to have a beer with his little brother.
Right.
And he heard the band. Then 6 months later, they were looking for a bass player to do some recording on one of Barry's albums and do a tour. And my name came up, and Victor said, yeah, I heard that guy somewhere. Yeah. So I got a call.
Awesome.
And went in and did a few sessions with him, and we hit it off, and then I was asked to do the tours, and toured for about a year and a half. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
On the planes. And, yeah.
But that's another one that came about by, who knows, if I had dragged my little amp to make the lug easy and not been heard, he might have just thought, oh, can't really hear that guy. I don't know if he's playing well or not.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And what was he like?
Victor or Barry?
Barry, yeah.
Barry, terrific.
Yeah.
And Victor, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Barry he's an excellent musician. And spoke our language, when he, at rehearsals, if he wanted things faster or slower or the dynamics changed, he would know exactly in the score where to point to and say,
oh, good.
Do this here and do that there. He's an excellent musician.
Yeah. I've got Jose Feliciano here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I never met him.
Oh, you didn't?
I did the whole album.
Right.
We tracked the whole album. And Dan Sawyer was a studio guitar player, was hired to come in and play all of Jose's parts. And it was all arranged, because it was a small, I think it was maybe 18 or 20-piece band playing on this album. And so we cut the tracks to Dan playing the guitar parts.
Right, sort of ghosting it.
Yeah,
right,
playing Jose's parts so we could understand the emotion of what's going on.
Okay.
And then Jose came in after all the tracking sessions and laid down his guitar part and did his vocals.
Right.
And that was not uncommon, really.
Right, okay.
And even if the artist was there, they wouldn't necessarily lay down their final track at the same time. It'd be a scratch vocal or something, just to give us the vibe. Yeah. Same. I did an album with Helen Reddy the same way.
Right.
I never met her. Spent a whole week tracking at Conway Studios, but she came in later and put her vocals on.
What does that feel like though? You're working and not meeting them.
Oh, well, it's okay. It's it's a job, and you go in and you do what you do with. Yeah, you try and work as a section and collaborate with the producer and follow instructions of dynamics. Whether it's to be intense or not. Yeah, it's where it's supposed to go for it and where it's not.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Was the synth bass put away at this stage?
It was starting to be.
Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't work for everything. It's really only for music like Gino that's original sounding music where you can't really take it along and play it to existing, like a pop band or something, because it just, you could play the synth parts, but you wouldn't, especially the way it was, that it was almost like two voices in the way I played it. If anyone listens carefully to Brother, you'll hear quite often the bass and the synth are playing together, and then the synth holds one note and the bass keeps playing, and then the synth filter starts opening and closing, and then they join again.
This is all in real time.
Yeah, that's in real time.
Yeah, right. Wow.
That has to be in real time. And you back then had to pick your patches very carefully because of the delay. When there's pitch to voltage delay, it's 1.5 times whatever frequency is playing. Okay. That there's a delay. So the lower the pitch, the longer the lag, the delay is going to be. Yeah. And if you really want fast tracking, and I do that still now, if I have a couple of synth-based systems, and if I really need to track quickly, I'll use a Piccolo bass, and because it's an octave higher, so it tracks faster.
Right, gotcha. Oh, wow.
But I had to pick sounds, and again, in the beginning, there was no memory even on the Oberheims. The Oberheim expander modules came with a thick pad of paper that was the same size as the module, and just a drawing, black and white drawing of the module, and you would, with pencil, mark in where your settings are to know where to put the filters, and you that was your memory. You tag that as patch 1, patch 2.
No iPhones.
No. And then eventually Sequential Circuits came out with a programmer that would hold 64 patches, and that was fantastic. So I had 2 of those hooked into it, so I could have 64 banks of memory.
Wow.
But again, all pre-MIDI, still pre-MIDI.
Yeah. Was there other systems being made at that time?
Not yet. Roland was just, I think they were getting ready, and the Roland system came out, I think, about 1980. Okay. And I did get one of those when they first came out.
Okay.
And then, or 2 of them, I think, and then another one, the G707, the big silver one. And Eric Pershing had a lot to do with the design of that, and Eric invited me down to City of Commerce, where Roland was at that time, to just consult a bit on what features would be valuable or not. And so I played a very small part, but a small part in that design of that system. Mm. I still have that system. It's a very good one. They're all very good, but they still suffer from the problem of pitch to voltage conversion. So the lower you're playing, the more lag there's going to be. You have to be careful of what patches you pick.
Right. And I'm sure there's modern day versions of it now.
It's still unless it's you can get very close to a lot of synth sounds by using distortion pedal and a envelope filter.
Yep.
And combining the two, but it's not a real synthesizer. You can't be opening filters and that sort of stuff. So if you really want it to be an analog synth, it needs to go through the pitch to voltage or use something like Steve Chick's MIDI bass he made here in Australia, where the frets are actually, there's tiny wires under the fretboard.
Right.
So as soon as the string touches the fret, there's instant recognition, just like a regular keyboard. If you were to take a Roland or Yamaha keyboard apart, you'd see underneath the key, when the key goes down, there's a little two contacts that meet and say hello, and then bang, instantaneously it knows what pitch, what voltage to send out.
Gotcha.
So with Steve's invention, the string touches the fret, instant recognition of what note it is, but no note is sent until the right hand strikes the string, and then the pickup senses whether it's loud or soft, and then and that's beautiful tracking on that system.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Instantaneous almost. Yeah. While you were touring with Barry, did he have you sort of locked down where you couldn't go out and do anything else? Or did that just take up all of your time?
Oh, no. When you tour, you're given a itinerary. You know when you're leaving and when you're coming back.
Yep.
And even with tours like very big, long ones, you're never out for months at a time. You go out for 10 days, 2 weeks. You're home.
Oh, right, okay.
Home. That's if you're touring the States, and you go out for 10 days or a couple of weeks, and then you're back for maybe a week or a few days, and then you go back out and you come back. And unless it's Europe or Asia or something, then you're out a little longer, but never. I don't think we ever away more than maybe 4 or 5 weeks at a time.
Okay.
And then we return back to home.
Mm.
Yeah. It was with his show in America, it was arenas and a huge circular stage that revolved around in the round, and light rig was above us, and sound was suspended above us, and so it took. I think there were 5 semi-trailers and. Dozens of crew to set the whole thing up and tear it down. So it was a big move. And so you'd rarely have 2 nights in a row. You couldn't get it set up and torn down that quickly. So you'd do one night somewhere in a stadium, in an arena, and you'd have a day off, and then fly to the next, wherever you're going next, have the day off there. Then the following night, a new show.
And on those days off, were you lining up sessions or...
Oh no, we're
just completely.
Oh yeah,
I have your day off.
I have fun. Yeah,
that's
I loved a couple of the guys in the band. We'd put our walking shoes on and go exploring, and just figure we're in this town. Let's go have fun and see go to the museums and art galleries and just see the sights if there's, local attractions.
Yeah. What year was that?
Ooh, that was 82, 83, around in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, Barry White, did you get to meet him? Or was
yes.
Yeah, okay.
I did one album with him called Change, and it was at his studio. He had a beautiful studio in Sherman Oaks. Behind his house, he had a 5-bedroom house that was gutted and turned into a gorgeous recording studio. Right. And we did the tracking there.
Okay. Yeah. And what were some of the songs off that album?
I can't remember. Okay. Now, Change was one of them, that the title of the album, and I don't remember. Yeah.
Now, Boy Meets Girl.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. You didn't play on Waiting for a Starter for...
No, I don't think I did.
I was looking at the music notes today.
Yeah.
But you played on just about everything else.
I played on everything. I think that's all synth bass on that one.
Yeah, right.
It's George Merrill. Boy Meets Girl is a fantastic songwriting and recording act. George Merrill and Shannon Rubicam, who were married at that time. And they wrote also I Want to Dance with Somebody and How Will I Know.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
They're fantastic songwriters.
Right.
And
because that's one of my all-time favourite songs.
Yeah.
Waiting for a Starter for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful song.
Great.
All their material is just great. And
I think the synth
That's George. Yeah.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. George is a fantastic musician, singer, and arranger. You know, really clever arranger. And I think drums on that would have been Michael Jokum, and guitar was John Goo. Was a great guitar player on all those. And sax was Gary Herbig.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you tour with them or just
No,
sessions?
never toured with them.
Yep.
Just did the records.
So was Barry one of the only?
Yeah. I didn't do a lot of touring.
Yep.
I did with Barry. The money was very good, and the conditions of travel were very good, so it was fun.
Of
but
course.
It just wasn't. I'm still not a big traveler. I do tour a bit here and there, a little bit rather, not a lot, not a big bit, but a little bit. I'm not a big fan of traveling. I go occasionally. Pretty much stay at home.
Yeah, that's cool.
Comfortable home.
Yeah, no, of course. Okay, so you got your head right into this studio scene. When did you decide that you were going to move away from the States?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. There's not any one point, but I just...
Was it the work? Sorry, was the work starting to...
No, I was doing good.
Yep.
I loved L.A. I'd never lived anywhere but L.A.
Okay.
I was married to an Australian at that time, and we had one little girl, my daughter Ashlyn. And I just... I'd been to Australia on tour. The very first time was in 1979 with Demis Roussos. And I'm not a mystical person or religious, but when I came to Sydney, I felt something. I just loved this city, and then saw the rest of the cities on the tour and loved all of Australia. And so I did meet someone here, and we got married. She moved to L.A., then we moved back here in 87, and then divorced in 1990, and then I got remarried again to my wife Melanie now in 94. But before that, so between 87 and 90, my son Sean was born, so I have 2 children. Okay. And then I forgot your question.
I asked, sorry, was there a moment where you decided to move from the States?
Oh, yes.
So,
I don't know. I just loved Sydney. Yeah, I really loved Sydney, and I just thought, I think it'd be a great place for my daughter to grow up. And so we moved here. And the first couple of years, I was hardly here. I was commuting a lot, back and forth, working for George and Shannon. Also for Jeff Tyzik, he's a jazz producer. I did quite a few albums with him, with Doc Severinsen and Alvin Vizzuti, another trumpet player, and Jeff Tyzik, jazz trumpet player and producer. I was commuting back and forth to do recordings with them, and
back to the States?
To L.A. and to New York. Yeah, and then, but then by about 1991, 92, I started to just spend more and more time here and not commuting. It was hard to keep both careers going at the same time. And I do love it here. And so I just did more and more here. Plus, it also was starting to get, the music industry was starting to change by then. There just weren't as many records being made, and the budgets were starting to come down. There wasn't as much money as there used to be to let them fly people around. And,
I understand. Yeah. So you had to sort of,
make a choice, whether to go back or stay.
Yeah. What sort of sessions were you doing here?
Here, TV shows. Worked for Pete Best on Wild Side, and Mike Perjanik on Home and Away. Did that for many years. Did the music again. That was a early morning start. We'd start it every Tuesday at 8 a.m. and do 3-hour call for the week's worth of cues that Mike would write for Home and Away with a 5-piece band, or a 6-piece band. It was.
Who was the band?
It was Tom Ferris on guitar. Drums were sometimes Rob Kitney, sometimes, it'll come back to me. Yeah, and cool. 2 keyboard players, David Fennell and Tony Ansel, and Doug Gallagher. That's who it was. Okay. Doug Gallagher. Yep. Yeah. And we would. So I guess that's a 5-piece band, isn't it? Yeah. And we do the sessions there. And then I did some recording and live playing with Tommy Emmanuel when I first came, and worked with him. And then eventually, and then in the 90s, Roy and HG did their TV show. Oh,
see, were you playing in the live band? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. And who was in that band?
That was Andy Gander on drums.
Oh, yeah.
And Jamie Rigg was the musical director.
Yep.
Paul Thorne on trumpet, and Marty Hill on saxophone, and Rex Go on guitar. Yeah, that was a fantastic, fun show to be involved in. Very creative.
Yeah. I came to Australia in 94. 94, end of 94.
Yeah.
And that show was, we still sit down and watch that.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah. Now, what about live playing? Besides the...
Oh, gee, it's typical here. What I did in L.A., it's quite a variety. Sometimes, a couple of weeks ago, I was working with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, playing electric bass. They were doing the film Casino Royale.
So back then. We'll move up to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, back then, same. Did work with SSO, did some tours here with Shirley Bassey, and everything. I've always been freelance. I'm not picky. If it's good music and good musicians, I'm there. I'd like to play. It doesn't have to be a huge crowd.
On the spot
that's all right. But it's
yeah.
And so some of the acts were really big names, and some were really small names. But that I just enjoyed. Sam McNally. We had a band with David Jones. It was Sam and David's band. I was playing the bass in it, but that was loads of fun to play their music, their original music.
Sam's a cool cat.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Chad Wackerman. How did your association with Chad come about?
Chad moved here about the same time I did, or shortly after, I think it was. And we knew each other a little bit in L.A., but we didn't work a whole lot together. I think we did some sessions for Kenny Poore, jazz producer there from Texas, but he used to always fly to L.A. to do his recording. And but we really got to know each other when he was living here. And then we wound up doing his group, the Chad Wackerman Group, which we did a lot of concerts and recordings with. And then also Chad and I we co-produced quite a bit of stuff together, and we played for backing different artists until he moved back to L.A.
Right, he had his own studio here, didn't he, with Peter Northcote, is that right?
Well, he had the studio that's below Megaphone in St. Peter's. It was called Air Motion. It was built by Guy Dickson, and Chad took that over and was renting that room. It's a beautiful small room.
Yeah.
And then I think Peter came in towards the end of Chad's. Chad had it all to himself for several years. Then Peter and him became partners in it.
Okay.
Then when Chad moved back, Peter just took it over.
Okay.
And it was Peter's room then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about drummers that you've played with in Australia, because I'm a drummer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I like to talk about drums, obviously. So you've played with some pretty sort of heavy cats. Now, what do you look for in a drummer? What's if you know what I mean by that question?
Yeah.
What do you prefer in a drummer?
Yeah. Well,
what don't you like?
In one sense, I try to be adaptable, and not say it has to be this way or that way. I think any collaboration, musical collaboration, in popular music, not a film score, but when you're given a master rhythm part or even a rhythm section part, but there's some interpretation to be done still. It's not exactly note by note that they want played. My favorite kind of drummer is someone that communicates well, that we can talk to each other and talk about the kick drum and the bass, whether we're going to line it up together or whether we're not, what style we're doing, and have a talk before we even play the song or even after we've done the first take, then just get together and say, let's build it up here, or you take the fill there and I'll take the fill there. And I love that collaboration. And most drummers are that way. Some aren't. Some are just more of no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't know what I'm going to do. You do your thing. I'll do my thing. We'll just see if it works or not. And that's another approach.
Mm-hmm. That could work?
It can work. It's not my way, my favorite way to work,
sure,
but it does work for many people.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. But my preferred way is to have more of a plan, or at least a framework, and then improvise within that framework, rather than just go freely and see which way the wind blows. But both do work.
Do you notice a difference in the American and Australian drummers in regards to that kind of stuff?
No. There's brilliant players here. The main difference is the lack. There's not a lack of great musicians in Australia. There's a lack of opportunity in Australia, and so many of the musicians I've worked with here, the drummers, and everyone else, but just if we're talking about drummers, they're world class. And had they been born in L.A., you know, when I was born there, they'd be doing great.
Yep.
They'd be fantastic. There's nothing lacking whatsoever. You've got Gordon Rittmeister, Andrew Gander, Bill Kazelis. Here we go, and I'm going to leave people out, and I'm going to be so mad at myself. But there are Jim Peace. There's wonderful artistic drummers here that, you know, very creative, very capable of playing any style, and listening and adapting, and just lack of opportunity. Yeah.
I've got a massive list of people that you played with, you know, but
there was a heavy metal band years ago called Crocus, and I was called in to play on their album, and just to play the bass. They were in between bass players at the time. That wasn't a member of the band, so I was a studio musician and called in to just play bass on this one album called Change of Address. And it was great fun, and what the funny thing that happened on that was I was very nervous because I'd never worked with a heavy metal band before. So it was about a week's worth of work in Hollywood, and we did the first couple of days tracking, and one day we took a break for lunch, and Fernando Von Arb was the lead singer, and all these guys looked fantastic, you know, 80s hair and great clothes and platform shoes, and just dressed beautifully, but they were real rock and roll, you know.
They were dressed like that for the session, was it?
Yeah, it was just normally their look, and and they were really successful at that time, and so they said, "Come with us to lunch," and I thought, "Oh no, that's okay, you know, I'll just get something local." And no, come with us. I thought, okay, this will be wild, I'm sure. We went to Musso and Frank's, which is a very old, established Hollywood restaurant that serves martinis. It's a very old school, conservative restaurant. So we went in, we sat down, we ordered, and I didn't know what to expect. Whether these guys were going to get wild and have a food fight, or, you know, but they were totally normal. Yeah. And then when the check came, Fernando said to the waiter, he was Swiss, and he said with his accent, I can't do the accent. He said, "Could we have separate checks, please?" And he looked at me. He said, "It's for tax reasons. They were totally. He was totally together. Totally, a businessman, and very calm and not wild, not rude. Right. So it was just something I wasn't expecting. I thought from the look of them and from the style of music that they played, and the bands in that era in the early '80s. You know, they were wild. TV sets being thrown out of the hotels and stuff. And,
Rolls Royces get driven into the pool.
Yeah, but they were, and they were just the opposite.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. What inspires you these days?
I don't know. I think it's just partly the thrill of the unknown, of getting on stage and off we go. I still love going to just about every job that I go to. I don't take anything that I don't want to do, and I'm always thrilled driving there. You know, I'm not always thrilled driving home, of course, because it's life. But it's always still so nothing. I think just the idea of getting together with other like-minded people, and getting together and sitting on a stage and working towards one goal. And if everybody's locked in, it's just an incredible high. It's just such a joy to lock in with some fellow musicians and an artist, and really pull something off well. And doesn't matter whether it's a huge crowd or a small crowd, or whether the record's a hit or it's not a hit. You just know in that moment you've done something, and we know, the musicians often know, you've probably done it too, you've played with a group sometimes, and you look at each other and go, yeah, we really nailed that tune, it was great. And not everyone notices, but and that's not really why I do it. There's a saying by Confucius, I don't know the exact wording, but the version I heard was, I don't seek to be famous, I seek to be worthy to be famous. And I really love that, because that's what I try to do when I go to any job is take the right equipment, show up on time, make sure I'm rested, prepared, and in a good frame of mind, and do a really good job with others. And if we're all together, it's going to be a great night. It's going to be a great event, whether it's a small club or recording session or TV show. It doesn't matter. You feel fantastic.
What does the next 12 months hold?
I have no idea.
Is your book?
Oh, I have some things.
Yep.
Yes, there's some things in there, but there's never.
Yeah, sorry. You do producing as well.
Yep,
right.
yeah, I do, and I compose music.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that. Sorry,
it's all right.
Should have mentioned that first. So, how much of your time is?
It varies. It sometimes gets really busy with the production. I just finished producing an album for a lady that was self-funded. She's a sort of a new age style, and she plays the piano and sings. Her name's Georgia Carr, and she takes a lot of the writings from a Sufi mystic named Hafez and Rumi, and she takes that poetry, love poetry, and sets it to music. She plays the piano and sings, and on her particular projects, I just get a good take of her singing and playing the piano, and then I take it home and I score it. On this most recent one, I scored it for viola, violin, and flute, and fretless bass, and then a couple of analog synth parts that was to play to thicken it up. And Jess Champa played hand percussion on about half the tracks. Mm-hmm. On the things that I produce, I never use artificial sounds. I like a drum machine. I'm just stubborn and old and cranky, and
good stuff.
Real players, because it just sounds better. It's more expensive. It takes a little longer, but if I call the right people and I've written clear, concise charts, it's not hard to play at all. Everyone gets it the first or the second take, and it falls into place, and it's very comfortable. Mm. And so that's the kind of music I like to produce, and then I do write. And have written and co-written with Chad Wackerman. We co-wrote a lot of things for Stuart Livingston and Marty Irwin when they had their company Sonic Assault. It's called production music or library music, and our music gets used on home building shows or when they're doing lotto. You never know where your music's going to show up.
Yeah, right.
So you write a whole album's worth of a certain genre. So we've done some things that are like 60s pop style. We've done some speed metal stuff with lots of, because Chad and I are both, we enjoy and we both cope well with odd times and metric modulation, and so we've written some wild, crazy stuff that gets used in extreme sports, snowboarding. Some guy screaming down a hill. They'll sometimes use our music for that. We never know where it's going to show up. Just every 3 months you get your check.
You
think, oh, that's good, or no one liked this quarter. We'll see what happens next quarter.
So when you get that check, does it tell you where?
Yes. You can see exactly in the world where it was used, what for, whether it was Fred's Tires in Sweden or a Japanese product in Japan.
So what's the most bizarre place you've seen your stuff?
Nothing bizarre. Just it's all over the world. It just depends on who's used it somewhere, and it gets logged, and then you see it on your statement of what country it came from.
Oh, that's cool.
That kind of music is. I love writing it and co-writing it. I just finished one for Art Phillips, who owns his own company here in Sydney, Music 101, and he commissioned me to do 12 tracks featuring fretless bass, but it's all ambient and floating. And so, again, scored that I played fretless bass and Piccolo fretless bass, and used Bill RISBY on keyboards. I think we used Wurlitzer and Rhodes, and David Longo on electric guitars, Gordon Rittmeister on drums, but very floaty, ambient. And that was just released, I think, several months ago, so I won't see whether that's doing well or not for maybe even a year till the residuals finally come back and come around. But you never know with that kind of music. It's not logical. You can write something that you think is really good, and it just never gets heard, just because a music editor somewhere in the world wasn't aware of it, or they ran out of time to audition stuff and didn't get to it. And other times you write. I did one with Chad. We did an album with Stuart Livingston years ago with Zamba. I had the 13th track, which was the whole album was really up and happy and positive, and that's what the whole project was about. I had written this one really depressing song where I played a baritone guitar on it, and it was low arpeggios, and it was very depressing and slow and heavy, and Stuart didn't like it, and he said, "Oh, we're not going to put this on the record because it doesn't fit the rest of the album." Well, back then they were making CDs, and so at the end, when it was all finished, Adrian Boland was the engineer, and he had mixed everything, and Adrian said to Stuart, "Well, we have room on the CD to throw that 13th track in if you want to." And Stuart said, "Yeah, throw it in, I guess, can't hurt." It got onto Oprah.
Wow.
Yeah, they used it on one segment on Oprah.
Yeah, right.
And so you just never know. You just never know. And it's weird that it even got discovered, how that one depressing track was discovered on a whole CD's worth of uplifting, happy music that Chad and I had written. But somehow the music editor found it. And so,
yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Would that stuff be getting harder to be discovered now? Because since the studio sort of works died up, people aren't doing the sessions, people are trying to supplement not supplement their income, but they're still trying to make money. You think there's more people doing that kind of stuff these days? Doing
the production music?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, there's always been a lot of people doing it. And there's...
I mean, more so now?
Probably.
Yep.
Yeah, probably more and more. It's... But that industry is changing. 20 years ago, you couldn't... somebody would be doing an ad and say, "Oh, we want a track that sounds like some current song of the day."
Yep.
And they wouldn't even approach the artist, because the artist would say, "Oh, no way I'm going to promote your tire mart, your tire store somewhere. That's not what I want to do."
Yep.
So they would turn to production music to get something that didn't get them sued, but it would sound a similar vibe to what it was.
Gotcha, yeah.
And that's not the stuff that I did. Everything I did was always, and Chad, we always strove to do unique stuff, because that's just what we like. But there are things in lots of projects where they do sound like this band or sound like that band. Not enough to get sued, but it's got the flavor. You get the idea of what it is. But these days, an advertiser using a promo for a television show, they'll go to the main artist at Universal or Sony and say, "We want to use your track, your hit track." And because there's not as many units sold as there used to be, most of the times, the publishers and the artist will say, "Yeah, let's strike a deal. Sure, you can use our product and we'll get paid the money for it, and you'll put a watermark on the promo saying what song and what track this is to push them."
Yeah. Which
makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
But so it's cutting into the uniqueness of what library or production music used to be. So that industry is starting to change as well. Everything changes. It's always just like operating systems on the Mac. Just as soon as you get used to something and master it, there's a new one that comes out.
That's it.
Yeah.
How do you write for drummers?
Well, I don't write very good drum parts. I'll if it's really a specific groove, I will write it out.
Yep.
But most of the time, I've written the tune and the basic groove, and I haven't really nailed down the exact part that I want. So I'll just give Chad or Gordon or whoever I'm tracking with, let them hear the bass part or play it for them, and give them a blank a chart with the bar numbers. I'm really good at lining up bar numbers and rehearsal marks, letter A, letter B, letter C, so we're all on the same page. And I lock it into I use Digital Performer so that even when we're recording, if I quickly want to go to bar 64 and hear something, I'm not searching for where's that bit that goes after the other bit in the middle of the bridge.
Yep.
So doing that, and then I'll just collaborate with them, really, and just say, there's lots of things you can do, but I hired you because you're great. So what are your options? What would you bring to the table?
Yeah.
And Chad has done the same with me, where he'll write his drum part and say, what kind of bass part do you think you want to approach this with?
And do you write it with dynamics?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Dynamics, any hits, any tooties, that everybody has to play it together or stop. And in production music, library music, production music, you have to also write things that are out of the 2.5 or 3 minute song. They have to be able to extract a 1 minute version, and I mean a minute to the millisecond exact, so that when the reverb dies, it's exactly 1 minute long.
Right.
So it can go to air.
Right.
Used for an ad. And you also have to do one that's 30 seconds, and you do one that's 15 seconds, and then anywhere from 5 to 8 seconds stings. Just a little stinger at the end. And that gets used for commercials, for advertising on commercials or in the background of promoting some other show. Or sometimes it gets picked up by a radio show where they'll use it at the end of an interview to play that stinger. That becomes sort of the theme of their show. So in writing all the compositions, I then have to do a little bit of math and look at the tempo that I'm at and how many bars and beats do I need to give me exactly 15 seconds. And sometimes you can extract it out of the piece and say, oh, we'll record, and we'll cut, from bar 7 to 11, then we jump over to bar 32 and 33, and then we jump right to the end and end it, and that gives us exactly 30 seconds. And it works. Other times it doesn't, so you have to write the 1 minute or the 30-second piece that still fits the melody and what's going on. And I forgot why I was telling you that.
It was fascinating anyway. I was asking about dynamics.
Oh, yes, yeah. And so, yes, the dynamics are most definitely written in.
Yeah. What sort of percentage of your income is that? It
changes. It changes from year or even from quarter to quarter. Sometimes I'm really busy playing the bass, and other times I'm not playing the bass at all, and I'm composing or producing. And there's no... I'm no good at predicting. I don't know if anyone is, of when the work's going to come in. At least the type of work I do, it's not predictable. I can't say there'll always be, a need for library music in January, or it's just whenever a company that I've worked for or know of me or I know of them say, oh, we're looking for a project. And there's some of the production music things I turned down because they asked me to do it. And I said, look, it's just not my bag. I'm not really strong at that. So I'm just not going to take it on because I can't do a great, strong job at it. But I never know. Like you asked earlier, what's the next 12 months for me? I have no idea. I do have some things in the book. Some gigs penciled in or written in, confirmed, and others are on hold. But everything is subject to change because even a gig that might be in 6 months that I've put in, if a tour or a project comes up, I may have to call up whoever's booked me and explain and say, look, I've just picked up a week's worth of work in there, so I'll need to send a substitute in. Let's talk about who you want to get to replace me for that. And every time, really, everyone understands that. I wouldn't cancel on someone because I got a job that pays a few dollars more. But if it's a major project that conflicts with something, people are always adaptable and understand that because we all go through that. We all have that come up.
Do you still practice?
No, I don't much anymore. I play my instruments when I'm setting them up. I do the minor setups and I'll test them that way. But I don't really practice anything. I do a lot of listening, and I think that would qualify as my practicing in that because I don't need to play everything, but just by hearing some recordings or some approach that a bass player's taken, it'll go in and I'll think, I see what he's done there, and I'm going to try that.
And you do.
Whether it be just, I guess the only practicing I do would be in sounds that I do sometimes set everything up and start working on some of my effects to try and get a unique effect or work with one of my compressors to think if I want to... I've been getting more and more into compression lately. I used to never, ever use it. Not that I hated it. I just didn't think about it. And now I'm starting to really enjoy it and use it as a tool, as an effect. Using it. So I've got quite a few different compressors that I'll spend time with those, just trying to understand how each one works differently and which bass I'm playing and how hard I'm hitting it, that sort of thing.
What's your go-to recording compressor?
Oh, I don't have one. It's when I record, I always record flat, no EQ, no compression. So all that comes afterwards. Yeah, and even if I'm tracking
that's probably credit to your playing and the way you set your gear up too, that you can you can get away with.
Yeah, the basses, the Marucci basses with the Bartolini pickups, they're so even. They're such an even sound. They sound beautiful, and so. And it's not just the Marucci basses. There's many basses that are just wonderful. They just sound fantastic, just straight. So I'll always record flat. And even if I'm recording for someone and they say, look, we do want some active EQ. We want that sizzling sound of the 80s, with a bright EQ. So I'll use, my basses are all passive, and a few of them do have active preamps on them, but I always just turn them off. I don't think the batteries even, probably aren't batteries in there.
Yeah, right.
I run them passive.
Yep.
And if I do want that active sound with the sizzling highs, the mids scooped out, and the thundering lows, I go to a parametric. I use TC parametric EQ.
Yep.
And I'll dial it in that way. And that way I can be very specific as to the sound I want. Because onboard preamps, even the really good ones, you're still doing, when you turn your highs and your mids or your lows, you're only doing what somebody has done on a parametric and decided how wide the bandwidth will be and what the frequency is going to be.
You're only limited to that.
Yeah. And so when I'm doing it with my own parametric, I can decide on which bass I'm playing it on and what kind of music there is, how big the kick drum is that I'm playing with, because that really affects the bass sound I'll go with live and recording, is to the drummer's kick that he's using. In fact, I panic when I get a call to do a session and they say, well, we haven't done the drums yet. We've just got this drum loop and we'll put the drummer on next week or something. And I think, oh no, well, who's he going to be and what's he going to sound like? How big's his kit? Or the kick drum? Because if he's got a massive, wonderful, big, gushy kick drum, I need to dial my tone a little bit tighter and thinner and play a little closer to the bridge and be a little bit more precise. On the other hand, if he's playing with a small little jazz kit or something, then I can move my right hand closer or further away from the bridge, closer to the neck, and get a big warm sound. But not knowing what the drums are going to do it's a shot in the dark.
So what would you do in that situation then?
I'd go for the middle.
Yeah, for the middle.
Yeah,
shoot
just
for the middle.
yeah, and just think I'll just play it safe. I'll just go in the middle. It's not my favorite way to record.
No, I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't think anyone really likes that, unless you can get away with that with like a film score, or if it's dance music or something where look, you're just this one little cog in the big machine. You just do your loop thing and off you go. Okay.
Squash it all up anyway.
Yeah.
So
But if it's any kind of popular music or jazz, there should, I like to be some interaction. Yeah.
Well, Leon, it's been awesome talking to you. Been looking forward to this one for a while. So
thank you.
Thanks for having me at your house.
A pleasure. Good to have you here.
And all the best for the next 12 months and onwards. And look forward to catching up with you soon.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Cheers,
look forward to hearing more of your podcast too.
Thank you very much.
I've listened to a couple, and the few that I've listened to this week, I've really enjoyed, and I've got them on my list to listen to them all.
Awesome.
And I am looking forward to hearing them all.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Leon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.